Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of WRARP in New Concord. It's not Cincinnati, but it is WRARP, pretty babies. Don't you forget it. Anyway, today I have a great show for you. So I'd like to welcome you all to the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. My name, as I've said before, most humbly, is Ray. I'll be reviewing some recent and classic LitRPG audiobooks for you. So sit tight, hold your chair arms with a white-knuckled, intense fear, anticipation, excitement, something like that, and we'll get right started on it. All right. So, in the spirit of Matt Dinniman's kaiju surgeon and the Jeffrey Falcon Logue and Jonathan Brooks dungeon symbiote, I've decided to make this Godzilla Appreciation Week because you have a dungeon that goes inside of a body, and that's just what you would do if you got eaten by Godzilla. So I just want to start off with the Bungeon. Boy, oh boy, I can't talk today. It is the Bio Dungeon. Pauly Shore is not a part of this book at all. He doesn't do anything, thankfully. So it's Bio Dungeon Symbiote, which is the Body's Dungeon Book 1. Again, by Jeffrey Falcon Logue and Jonathan Brooks. So you've got a powerhouse dungeon duo here. It's narrated by Miles Miley, another amazingly amazing narrator whom I really adore. So there's a lot going on there just off the start to tell you how good this book is. But it has a book length of 10 hours and 24 minutes. So it's lengthy enough for you to enjoy, but leaving you wanting more.
Progen looked at his available mana again and was surprised to see that it had increased by 2, to give him 94 out of a maximum of 125. And it felt like it was slowly ticking up as well. Stemmy, am I automatically absorbing energy and converting it to mana without my knowledge? No. The extra mana is from the destruction of the few bacteria that were destroyed within the area of the small intestine that you had infused with your mana. The energy released upon their destruction is not directly proportional to their numbers or relative size, though it appears as though your infused mana sections will eventually absorb whatever is released by the destruction of foreign organisms. It is gradual, however, so it is not available instantly for use. So, just like I would receive a boost in my mana if an adventurer were to perish in my dungeon, I'm gaining some from these bacteria? Yes. That was also good to know, as it gave Progen another reason to want to eliminate all of the hostile pathogens infesting what he eventually wanted to claim as his body. They were invaders to his dungeon, after all. So it was only right that they provide him with something that would benefit his crystal from their destruction.
Okay, so Jeffrey Falcon Logue and Jonathan Brooks team up to create a very interesting new type of dungeon. And I have to say, while I love the story itself, the dungeon was not a very nice character. It was kind of hard for me to say, I love this guy. Like, you read, like, say, for example, Dakota Kraut's Divine Dungeon, and you have Cal. Cal is actually a pretty good guy. I mean, he's maybe an evil dungeon to a little degree, malicious in certain extents, but he's very fair about everything. So you can equate, he's got fairness going on for him as opposed to all of his other little things that he does. Like, he does try very hard to kill people, but he's very fair about it. Here, this dungeon, it was kind of hard for me to sympathize with him throughout the whole story. It starts off with the dungeon basically eating a really nice little dungeon sprite and then doing everything in its power to take the body of a young thief, a la John Carpenter's The Thing. So if you know that John Carpenter's The Thing, you know it's a cell-by-cell takeover of a body. And that's pretty much what he does. He does it system by system, but he just can't get to that annoying little brain just yet. So you're probably saying, hey, Ray, you know, you love that sort of stuff. But I totally made the dungeon... I'm sorry. You love this sort of stuff, but it totally made the dungeon more of a villain than one of the heroes. And you know, Cal, Doc, even Fred, not Fred Burger, but, you know, Fred Winkle-Mossering. If I'm going to go through a couple of the, you know, Cal, Doc, Fred, these are the big dungeons. If you have names for dungeons, those are the big three right off the bat, that they had their flaws. but they were basically very decent and had morals and ethics that they followed. And not this core. This core is kind of hell-bent on taking over the body it is in and doesn't care about the host at all other than their physical health, okay? And that's okay, but it doesn't make me say he's somebody I want to know more about. The struggle he had was interesting only insofar as it made me say, oh, hey, the MC of the human section of the book needs this to happen, and thankfully the dungeon is doing everything in its power to save this guy, because he's really interesting, and he's very sympathetic, and he's got a lot going on, so you really have a lot of sympathy for the cat to start with. I'm not even mentioning that he has a dungeon inside that's slowly taking him over bit by bit. In fact, the title of the book should not have been Symbiote. Symbiotes live in harmony. This is more of Parasite, and I don't care how much the dungeon did to repair stuff, restore health, even, restore the young thief to everything in his power. It wasn't altruistic. It had nothing to do with pretty much doing it just to help the kid. It was, it was kind of like, well, the dungeon wall fell down over here, so I'm going to rebuild this wall. And there's rats in the sewer, so I'm going to clear the rats out, and that sort of stuff. And that was like my biggest contention with it was, I wish they had made the dungeon like maybe accidentally do a couple naughty things. He was learning or figuring his powers out, because the way he knows about the body is from one of the acts that was not so nice in the first place. So again, I don't really want to say that it's not good. Like I said, I love the book, and I do like the thing, and I like that concept, but it just made me say, like, I really don't know if I want the dungeon to win the battle as it's going through, the body. Maybe the kid would be better off if the dungeon dies, at some point. So, it was kind of like up in the air on how to feel about stuff. Now, like I said, it was enough that I enjoyed it. It was fun, and I can dig an evil MC dungeon. It just wasn't really portrayed 100% evil or 100% good. It was kind of like on the fence, and it was it's going to teeter this way or that way that made me not really know what I felt about the dungeon. Either way, the book really kept my attention, and I do want to see more of the series. That said, either way, Miles Miley does a great job, as always. I mean, he always does a great job, except my only issue with him is that he used the British pronunciation of the word capillaries. Now, I know a lot about human anatomy. In fact, when I read this book or listened to it, I knew what was going on where and what was attacking, because I've taken all of these classes 1,000 times when I was in college, when I was in mortuary school. I've had microbiology, pathology 1 and 2, anatomy, physiology, you name it. I've had all those courses. I know everything in those areas and aspects of things. And he would call capillaries by an incorrect, in my opinion, for the American audience. It was and they only did it a couple times, so I listened, and I was like maybe 3 or 4 times it just came up. They're only mentioned a couple times, thankfully, because if it was repetitive, it would drive me insane. But he calls capillaries capillaries. Now, just so you can hear, this is the proper way to say capillaries.
Capillaries.
Did you hear it?
Capillaries. Capillaries.
Okay. He says capillaries. Okay. Which, if you listen, I believe this is the.
Oh no.
Nope, can't listen to that. Nope. I was trying to put it on for you. Oh, okay, I'll just have to back up. Sorry, I was trying to put it on there for you where it would just say like capillaries, and it's the British way of saying it. And I don't know if Miles is British or not, but it's there, and it just kind of threw me off a little bit. Otherwise, he did a spot-on job with the terminology and the phrases and the anatomy stuff. You name it. It wasn't like you never felt like it was Star Trek scientific mumble jargon. As they do that technobabble speak sort of stuff. It was spot on, but the capillaries just kind of, I was like, was he talking about capillaries? And it just kind of knocked me off base for a few seconds. But otherwise, he's great. And narration, it's practically flawless. So the flawlessness was jarring, especially someone who knows human anatomy and physiology as well as I do. The book does at least add a half an hour at the end on the audio section for the medical glossary, just in the reading of it. So if you're not familiar with what he's talking about in the book, what those two guys are saying, here's what this is going on, it's happy to give you some stuff. So it'll, educate you a little bit in that area. The book is fun, it's original, it's got a lovable human protag. It's got really good narration. And like I say, I'm still on the fence as to how I feel about the dungeon. The concept is fantastic. I love that he shrinks down and goes into the human body and makes himself smaller to avoid certain things. And then therefore becomes the most microscopic dungeon of all time. Really cool, really cool. I just don't know if he's somebody I'm going to say he's a good guy or a bad guy just yet. Don't know how I feel, but I really think that in this case, as much as he was helping it was more of a parasite than a symbiote, because symbiotes build each other up, and the MC really didn't have a clue anything was going on in there, and the only reason why the dungeon was doing stuff was for its own benefit. That's parasitic, not symbiotic. So anyway, my 2 cents. I will say it is 8.2 stars. I love this. I do want to get more. So, start cranking this book out, guys, because this is it's really good. If you're looking for something new and innovative, especially in the realm of dungeons and dungeon cores, this is very different. You'll have not read anything like this before, so check it out. Okay, so next up is Planted. I can't speak anymore. I don't know what's going on. It's Planet Civilian by M.A. Carlson, narrated by Jeffrey Caffer, with a book length of 6 hours and 48 minutes.
They are sadistic little buggers, always dodging attacks like it's a game, taunting you when you miss. Anyway, you're gonna kill it by the end of today or we're leaving. Then, with a heavy clap on my back that almost pushed me over the wall, Hammer walked away. I looked back at the squirbit, the little brown animal with super speed. It was just standing there, digging into the ground for a moment before standing to its hind legs with an oversized grub or worm in its mouth, which was struggling to get free of the squirbit, only to be devoured in short order. And then the little guy vanished again, appearing a few feet closer to me and digging once more. "Sorry, little guy, it's either you or me," I said, taking aim and charging up my shot. Given it was a small animal, I didn't want to use too much power, so I tried to make the void burst as small as I could, maybe half of a centimeter in diameter. As soon as the squirbit stood again with another insect in its mouth, I burst the miniature void next to its head. But there was no blood or guts. Then I heard a chittering.
So if you've been jonesing for some good superhero action, Mark Carlson has the goods for you here. I have to warn you, though, this isn't your typical bam pow kind of superhero stuff. In this one, a man is pulled into a conflict between heroes and villains in an alternate reality. His alter ego is a villain in this other dimension, and he gets killed, and then this MC has to step up to help the heroes do some stuff, and he has to take on the persona of his other half that was from out of the world. So I'm not trying to give away too much, but that's as much as I'm going to go. That's right at the beginning of the story, and so you won't miss anything. But anyway, he's pulled in this conflict, and it sends him into this world where men can kind of leap tall buildings and women are faster than speeding bullets or locomotives or something like that. But it's all due to little bitty nanites that has infused this world. Now, after an infusion of alternate reality nanites, the MC gains superpowers and is asked to pose as his alternate self in order to stop the real big bad of the book. Now, there were a lot of things about this book I enjoyed. The power system was really cool. I liked how they had like milestones rather than levels and that sort of thing. And the way that you didn't technically level, was fun because you're like, it's almost like, we reached issue 50 finally, so it's a milestone. You have a milestone event in comics. This is a milestone event in the hero's life. So the more they experience, they gain or learn, or however you want to word it with the power stuff, it's through the nanites, the more the milestone is reached. Okay, so that was pretty neat. I also thought that the MC kind of applied his space and time powers in unique ways. The only drawback that I really had with this book was, while there are heroes and villains in the story, it really didn't seem to fit the vibe of a world filled with superpowers and tights. It was more of a post-apoc setting, really, if you look at it like this, that had humans gaining superpowers and abilities far beyond the keen of mortal men. And then, the ones who have like the real strong powers that are actual genuine heroes, they're protecting the weaker, like I can make the air blue, or I can make food glow kind of people. The civilians. That was more it. Like, I really didn't get to feel like, okay, we're here to stop a bank robbery or something like that, or there's this evil machination of this Doctor Doom, Doctor Octopus kind of melded. There was no real sense of this side and that side, go at it, and they have alter egos, and they have. Because I don't think they even had alter egos, to be honest with you, in the book, where they pretended to be somebody else. Like, they just had superpowers. So you didn't have that aspect of it. And you also, really, rivals. I mean, I think they had some people who were rivals, but I think it was just kind of like, whoever you caught at that point in time was who you caught. And that was kind of like where I said, okay, I'm stepping back here, because it is superheroes. They have superpowers. And they have code names. And, they do wear costumes to a certain extent, so it's superheroes, but it's not your typical comic book superhero kind of stuff. And I know most times, you would think the other books in the past that we've had reviews on with superheroes, they're built like on the City of Heroes kind of premise, where you get a costume and you have an arch nemesis and that sort of thing. And this book doesn't have that per se. Like I say, it feels more post-apoc, and they just kind of adopt the superhero, I don't know how to even word it. They adopt this postmodern superhero perspective to kind of equate like their power gains and things like that, is how it kind of comes across. Again, that's not to say this is not interesting or fun. It's just not like if you're expecting like Captain America versus, Baron Zemo, going to be disappointed, because that's not the way the book works. It's very weird. And the only thing I thought really funny was, I was expecting more tights and fights than hunting expeditions. That's one of the things, like they're trying to power level the faux Dr. Portal, not the faux like enemy, I mean like the fake Dr. Portal, which is who the MC is. He kind of takes over the Dr. Portal persona, the nom de plume, so to speak, and basically, they want to level him up or milestone him up as fast as possible, and yet they go out there and they're like, okay, you have to gather these nanites, and then they all swarm in and they start eating up these nanites as much as he is, or faster, for themselves. And I thought, all the times in the world, you're wanting this guy to gain power as quickly as possible. You don't want to be the guy first sucking up all the nanos. It was just weird how that kind of played into it a little bit. And I get maybe it wasn't an incentive, but it just seemed really weird. Like, I would be spoon feeding the guy nanos and nanites, you know what I mean? Just eat this, until he was strong enough to do what he needed to do. But the nice thing was the Dr. Portal pretend guy, who was also the physician. And I think he couldn't call him the doctor just because of Doctor Who. He couldn't say, I'm the doctor. There'd be like a lawsuit or a trademark infringement or something. So he called himself a physician because he was a med student who was just about to become a full-time doctor before he got sucked into the other world. So he calls himself the physician. So he has 3 names, his real name, his fake name as a villain, and then the physician. So as he goes through things, I just kind of lost my thought because I was going off on a tangent. But anyway, I would have been spoon-feeding him as much stuff because the guy is smart and he does a lot of really neat things with his powers, and he outwits higher level people because they're so reliant on their powers and they don't know how to really use them in little dinky ways, where he's forced to think around the way that it's usually been done so that he can advance faster. So he's got to kind of think outside the box, so to speak, in order to power level, and he does it really well, which makes him able to handle, like, if he's a level 20 or 30 or whatever, he can handle level 80 believably and plausibly. And again, he doesn't overpower them, but he can outdo a level 80 milestone character because he kind of knows how their powers work. It's not an OP situation. And it's the same thing with monsters. He goes out and there's, the animals have been mutated by the nanites. Same thing. He can outwit the animals or the monsters, whatever you would call it, just by rethinking how to use his abilities compared to what the other people usually did. So, the story kept my attention. I enjoyed the MC a lot. My only issue was the heroes felt like more like gamers in the way that they snagged XP away from the faux Dr. Portal. He was a guy that they needed amped up, so, they weren't doing him like they should have. So that was like my only issue. There was one guy that was doing power leveling, and he kind of helped out a little bit, but otherwise, yeah. Jeffrey Kaffer does a really, really outstanding job, and he brought this story to life. I mean, for me, it kept my attention the way he did things, and he had nice feminine quality voices at points. I didn't feel like it was like a guy doing a woman's voice. I'm not saying he had a huge range of different ladies, but he did, so it worked really well. I think he did a great job. And the time zone of 6 hours and 48 minutes, that little clink right there, that's good. It was a nice, quick, it was like a comic book. You read an issue, it's 22 pages or whatever you have, 25 if you're lucky, if it gets bigger, but you're done with it in no time at all. Like, you spend $5 for a comic book, and you get like 10 minutes of reading, and look at the pictures later. And this was quick, and it was a nice little bite of fun to digest. So, like I say, it had a couple things I thought hiccups were I didn't feel superhero setting. It was a different kind of setting, but it was superheroes in a post-apoc world, so to speak, or just to kind of give you an idea. So it was a genre-bending thing, and it was okay. It was enjoyable. It was an 8-star book for me. I thought that the character, the fake Dr. Portal, the physician, has a lot of potential, and I think that he probably has a few things he can teach the other heroes in that world. So I would say give it a look. I mean, I enjoyed it a lot, and I think that it will improve as time goes on. So check out the Planet Hero Civilian, and you'll enjoy it. All right, next up. Did I say that? Next up? Next up is the Genesis game, World Apocalypse Calamity Dungeon, written by Andrew O'Kelly, narrated by Kurt Bonham, with a book length of 7 hours and 3 minutes.
Seraph, said an agonized voice, a voice for whom Seraph could not place the location of its origin. This thing you have done is no victory. How can there be victory in all this death? Victory was never to be the reward, only survival. Your brothers and sisters lay dead in the field, and beneath them I see the mountains of corpses piled from the innumerable inglorious dead. How can this be? How could you have failed so spectacularly? I have long promised a new Eden if only humanity would reach my altar. And yet, humanity is no more. I cannot save you from extinction. This thing you have done to yourself, the dead number in the billions.
And again, 7 hours and 3 minutes. I'm just going to repeat that because I'm on this tangent in my head and I want to say it. Of all the books that have come out that this is kind of similar to, this is probably the shortest book that I've gotten so far, because like usually you have the Towers of Heaven and the Reborn Apocalypse. Those are a lot longer, at least by a few hours. And while it's shorter, it's no less than those other books. It was a very enjoyable book, and it gives you a different perspective, and I'll go into it in a minute here. But anyway, Genesis game is like that now familiar tale where there's a dungeon in the future, there's a hero, the hero ends up dying, he somehow goes back into the past and has a chance to redo everything that was done wrong the first time and save the world and save the people and power up. So again, like I said, think Reborn Apocalypse by L.M. Kerr and Towers of Heaven by Cameron Milan. Basically, in this world, a dungeon pops up, the people of Earth slowly gets devastated, decimated, whatever you want to say, and one person goes back into the past, not really to help out, but because he has an ability, lets him go do this to reset himself. And this way, he's trying to make himself stronger the next time around. The problem is, and not the problem for the book or the story, is that he's really not a good guy. He is a brutal, efficient, a machine, so to speak, on like taking out anybody who's in his way and anything that opposes him or can slow him down or stop him from achieving the goals that he has. I'm talking like Genghis Khan and Attila the Hun are his nice cousins. Okay? Black Seraph, or just Seraph, whatever you want to call him, he is very, very vicious, unapologetic in the way he does things, and it's very disconcerting for him when he finds himself back in the past, resetting with his father in a crippled body. No, not his father in a crippled body. He's in a crippled body. Because he has to go through this whole thing again, and he's kind of forgotten, because he's become so powerful in the future, what it's like to be in this state. He actually has to, and it's pretty neat to see him try to reconstruct his memory of what a father is, who his father was, and then once he starts doing that, does he want to do an emotional attachment to the person that he's with, or is he just going to cut him loose? Because in the first version of Time, his father was killed right at the very beginning of the apocalypse, the dungeon appearance. This time around, he does everything he can to save his dad. But he's pretty smart, because they're near where the dungeon begins, and he knows that if he gets there, being the first people in it will give him like a huge bonus, and so he wants to get there, go through the dungeon, get this bonus, extra abilities that he didn't get the first time around because he went in long after everything had started. And he kind of picks and chooses what he needs to, lets his dad do his thing, and so on and so forth. And he comes to realize his dad is actually pretty much hardcore in real life, something he didn't realize before. And the nice thing about it is that the MC had flaws that caused him to fail. And in his reset, he does everything he can to correct those in himself. But you can see where his moral compass has also lost direction. And he struggles with his father, especially, to decide whether he should fix it or just do what he came to do. Well, so this is kind of a dark story. And it really, you can see where it leads to, where it's heading. The difference is, this time around, Seraph's dad is really like a kind of a glue to the other people in the dungeon. He helps them get through things. He stands up and does the right thing all the time. He's a real hero, and that's like what he ends up getting as his choice of character. He's a specific kind of hero. So the way I look at it is, Seraph is very much, speaking as a father of autistic children, he's very much autistic. He's a very high functioning autistic, if you ask me. He knows who people are, what they exist for, but he has no bonds or ties to them, and that really makes him very efficient in his future, or his first time through the wormhole, so to speak, going through life with the dungeon, because he has no bonds, no sympathies, nothing, and he does everything in his power to grow stronger, regardless of the cost of life, limb, happiness, whatever it is. He doesn't care. So that is where you see, like, the book is about the struggle. Like, will he reset that moral compass, or will he just say, I've got to get stronger, I need to be stronger in order to achieve everything that needs to be done, so that this time around there's no chance of failure. I'm going to tear this place up and become top dog all the way across. And what you see is, now this is my perspective, I can see his father becoming a real contender for what he wants to be. Because, father and son go in, but do they come out together? don't want to say. On whose side who's on and anything like that at all. I don't want to do it. Because it's just a really good, fun story. So the question is, does Seraph become a good person, a better person, or does he, revert back to the old ways? And that's where I say he's a pretty dark character, because you can see, and I love dark characters, he is sort of conflicted with what he should do and what the moral thing would do a lot of times. And you see him doing things like he'll say, I know it's wrong, but I'm going to do this anyway because. And you can justify what he does. Like, I said earlier about the bio dungeon. There's a dungeon, and he's not really a good guy. Well, the dungeon there willingly does everything that it can. It never questions what it's doing, if it's right or wrong. Seraph literally does this the entire way through the book. It's not like a whiny, is this the right thing to do? No, it's a very focused, I wonder, if I do this, how is it going to affect the world? Is it going to better me? Is it going to better other people? Will it help my dad? That sort of thing. And then he makes his decisions based on this. The bio dungeon, the dungeon itself really doesn't have that struggle. It never cares beyond itself, like what it's doing to its host. Never. So I can say, like, dark in this case with the Genesis game is good because you do have questionable morality happening at any given moment, whereas with the dungeon there's no question. The dungeon is just in it for himself, and it's no knock on anybody. It's just two different kinds of story. That's how I look at it. My only issue is it's a solid story. It's a little short for my taste. Like I say, I look at Reborn Apocalypse. I look at Towers of Heaven. They are a lot longer in length. I would have loved to have had a longer book. I mean, this was just a very fun book. I enjoyed it. Bonham's narration was spot on. I think he did a wonderful job. It kind of reminded me of Steve Campbell doing the Tower books, to be honest with you. He just topped this out. It was really good. So the story's solid. It's just a little short, and I'm digging like 7 to 8 hour books lately, a lot. But when it was all said and done, I still wanted more. So as much as I'm saying I like a 7 hour, 8 hour book, I do enjoy like a lengthier kind of story when it's so big. Like, this is a very big tale. It's very broad and sweeping, even though it's very personal. So when it's something that big, I need more. I want more. Give me more. So if I had to say there was anything wrong with it, it's that it's not big enough in length anyway. Overall, it's a solid 8.1 story with a flawed lead, nice narrations. Best of all, it's unapologetic. There's no, hey, I'm sorry, my guy's, he's a jerk, or he's, that's fine. I appreciate it. I mean, I've got a story on Royal Road right now where the guy is a survivor, and he doesn't care who he hurts as long as he survives. And there are people like that, and that's my MC, and that's this MC. But he actually questions himself. He struggles with the internal conflict just because he's back into that young body, and his emotions are raw. So he's not, inured himself to the world yet. He doesn't have that barrier and strength that he had before, emotionally, because before I think he was emotionally dead. And like I said, I think he's autistic, and he comes back and his body is still connected emotionally to things that are going on. I think his mind is still there, but he is in that body of the young man, and that really affects him and makes him really think things through. And so that, to me, is probably one of the more fun aspects of the book, was just trying to see where he was going to go, what he was going to do, and if he was going to do the right or wrong thing. So, like I said, it's unapologetic, and it's extremely fun. And the only reason why I didn't give it a higher score is just because it is a little short. And I know that some people are going to hate a darker MC. It's just the way it is. But for me, I enjoyed the MC a lot, and I liked the story. So 8.1, and I think you'll love the story. If you like Towers of Heaven or Reborn Apocalypse, this is a good book for you. It's very much in the same vein, just different kind of storytelling and different character. All right, last one for the day is our Soundbooth Spotlight. You may have seen me talk about this with Ramon on the latest SBT event. This is Life Reset, Book 4, Human Resource, written by Shemer Kuznets, narrated by Jeff Hayes, Annie Ellicott, and Catherine Winkle. Book length, 16 hours and 15 minutes.
The enhanced Foblins threw themselves at me. I instinctively froze one. Using the power of my complete armor set, I started bombarding them with spells. I launched 5 drilling arrows at the lead cyborg, reducing him to a bloody scrap heap while simultaneously casting Dire Ball on a group of them. To my dismay, as soon as the sphere of destruction impacted the Foblins, the volatile energies were sucked into their bodies, giving them a visible boost to speed. I had just enough time for another round of spells. I froze another Foblin, reactivated my shield, and cast Shadowhound. 4 large, dark mastiffs materialized from the surrounding darkness and instantly launched themselves at the charging monsters. My hounds were big enough to topple 2 assailants each, but that still left about a dozen to charge at me. My shield flashed and vibrated as the small, enhanced monsters started pounding on it. Crackling energy burst through the exposed wiring in their arms and began to once again eat away at my shield.
Like I say, you may have seen us discuss this a little bit here and there on the R&R section, Ramon and Ray, on the latest SBT live show. If not, go back and look, as Ramon and I do kind of chit-chat and talk a little bit before giving our thoughts on the latest books and other things in this series. So, Human Resource, really, just getting into it, I'm just going to jump into it. It felt like the second half to Book 3. Now, I'm not saying it, Shemer ripped the book in half and said, okay, I'm going to just kind of stop here. But if you go back and look, I really felt like Book 3 was very rushed. I think it just felt like he was trying to get everything crammed into the end and complete it. And I don't know if he was planning on ending the series there or what his thoughts were with the series. But getting at that point at the end, I was kind of like, wow, it just felt like that happened way faster because like the first 2 books were much longer than the third book. In the third book, it just kind of seemed like, okay, I've got to get this wrapped up. And so I really, really feel like this is kind of the continuation of that story. So it's kind of like the other half of the tale. So it's kind of like book 3.5 or 3.2.0 or I don't know what you want to call it, but it really feels like this is the complete version. And it's actually longer than the last book. So, you know, I really, like I said, I'm not saying it is or that's what happened, but that's how it feels to me. Because it picks up right off where the other one left, and it gets Oren back into the game world really quickly. And in fact, I'm going to say it like this. It was kind of predictable insofar as how Oren was able to achieve getting back into the world and that sort of thing. It was like everything I thought had to happen was what happened. And that's fine. That's fine. Just because to me it was predictable, I kind of like sat there and thought, like, if he, after the end of book 3, if he does decide to come back to the series, how will he justify getting everything back in? Because Oren had issues, if you know, dealing with, is he a goblin, is he not a goblin in his head in that world. And so, you know, getting him back into it would have been very dangerous for him. And I said, there's going to be things that happen, and this has to happen, and this has to happen. And I kind of had it figured out. Great, that's good, no issues. We jump right into the story, and it kind of gets you back to where it needs to be. Oren then has to go in and kind of rebuild everything that got torn down from the last time around. If you remember, the entire world got scrapped, and then some players were trapped in that world, because if they were free, then they would just shut the game down, and the VI that were inside the virtual intelligences would just be killed off instantly. And they don't want to do that, so they've trapped players in the game. And Oren is not welcome in this world. He's been booted out a couple times, and he has to fight his way back in. So, you know, it's really neat to watch how he deals with, first off, getting back into the game, and then once he's in the game, rebuilding everything almost from scratch, energizing the dead that all died because he can bring them back with his graveyard, dealing with his love because he has a wife in the game who he actually does love, and he has a child who is way more than what she seems. I'm sorry about that. That just snuck up on me. I don't have COVID, so you're safe. So the child is a melding of the computer and him. And so she's a lot different than what she seems. And I think one of the best scenes, and I talked about this on R&R in the book, is where, Oren and his daughter kind of struggle. They fight each other out to kind of, she wants to go do something. He says, prove it, you're good enough. And they kind of go at it, toe to toe. And I was like, that was like a really good, because it was father-child, feeling each other out, kind of sizing up who each other was and were, and that sort of thing, because as far as Oren's concerned, he can't let anything happen to her, and she just wants to go out and live life and do what she needs to. Of course, that's the eternal conflict with parents, and so it was a nice struggle, but it was like a really neat, fun little scene. Probably my favorite in the whole book, but she's pretty tough, and she's smart, and she thinks unlike every other VI in the game. She has a lot more going for her. So there's a lot of things in there, that you didn't get the first time around. And so a lot of things get flipped for Oren, and he's got now, like before he was thinking outside the box, now he's got to think of like the next box over, how to get things in there to work. Because he was been out of that box is now gone, and he's got to figure out how to readjust everything, because now the rules have changed in this new world. So he does a really slick way of, really, really slick thing where he reimagines how things need to be done, and it works for him. So he's pretty good. His goal is to check on the players that are trapped, get them to safety if he can, and then, like you say, rebuild and make himself stronger. So he's got a lot of different things going on. He's got to capture territories. He's got a monster god to free, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot happening in this book, and in 16 hours, it doesn't feel like it was long enough. Again, I know I say a lot. I like 7 to 8 hour books, and I just complained about one that was 7 hours, and it wasn't long enough here. This is another book I could have had for 24 hours, and I would have enjoyed it just as much, or if not more, because the book is very fast-paced, but it unfolds at just the right pace. But it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot happening in this book. And like I say, he's playing catch-up from book 3 to getting to where it needs to be in book 4, so that book 5, which is out now on ebook and in regular paper, where it needs to go. So the story can kind of tell itself now without having to repair all the stuff that happened from the third book, okay? So SBT, I know I've said it before, They right here, they really do like a really good job. I think the FX and the music, especially the music, it wasn't overwhelming. Like sometimes I'll listen to like something with Charles Dean in it, and the music will come on, and it gets really loud. It gets to be like, I'm like, what are they saying? Sometimes I don't know. I mean, I can hear it, but it's just like I'm struggling with the words versus the music. Here it was this is a perfect tone, perfect pitch. The FX were great. I enjoyed that a lot. And I mean, and Laurie Catherine Winkle and, Annie Ellicott, they're just fantastic as the women. You just listen to them and you're like, man, they can narrate. And Jeff, of course, I'm glad to hear Jeff back in the saddle, doing stuff like this. I haven't had enough books with him lately, and so getting Jeff like with a bulk of a story is really great, because he is excellent, and he's, like I said, he's my favorite narrator. So anything he does, I'm always happy to listen to. So the book itself is well done, excellently performed. It's a solid production. My score is 8.4. It would have been higher, but the only thing that stopped me from this is that a lot of times it feels like it's trying to repair more of like the end of book 3 than it is to, go bigger, bolder, better, faster. Because once we get to that point, the book really takes off. It just soars. But it took about a third of the book to get all that other stuff out of the way. And if we didn't have that, it would have been like wham, we'd have been just flying. So he could have achieved it one of two ways. Either not had that other stuff be quite so important to the first half of the book, basically, or first third of the book, or he could have extended the book out a little bit longer and given us more. Either way, it was a great book, and I know why he ended it where he did, because there's a lot of things that are going to happen because of the next goal, and you couldn't tell that with another 30,000 words. It's going to take at least 100,000 just to get where he needs to go. So the book itself, just amazing. I enjoyed it. 8.4 stars. I really look forward to book 5. And I think you will too. Well, that's the show. I hate to say it, but it's over. As my best friend Sean would say, yes, it's over. And I do want to remind you all that this is Godzilla Appreciation Week. So I just made it up, but I appreciate Godzilla nonetheless. So if you're a fan of the big green googly monster that goes around irradiating everybody and eating the crap out of Japan, just say hi to him mentally for a moment, because Godzilla is an important member of my childhood memories. He's in that pantheon of the greatest monsters of all time. Godzilla, then the Wolfman. Lon Chaney Jr. only. Okay, so anyway, I hope you've all enjoyed the show this week. We've had a lot of stuff. I've been very busy. I'm very sorry. I have worked non-stop hours, and the only time I could have recorded, I couldn't do it because I didn't have my equipment, and that was during my son's graduation party that we had for my parents this weekend. We had to split it twice due to family conflict. Because there were scheduling conflicts and family conflicts. It's not quite the Hatfield McCoys, but it's getting there. Anyway, just to let you know, you can always follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and I guess Stitcher. So, if you like to do that, check us out. Leave some comments below. I will dig it. Okay, pretty babies. We will see you next time on the flip side. Take care. Peace out, yo.